YouTube, it's Brian Phillips. We're coming to you with something new and exciting. It's called the Sky Remote ID Module. Yes, and a battery. We're gonna get into that in just a minute, but I have prepared a short statement. The short statement is gonna help us to articulate some details. Okay, so to begin with, we're very happy to be bringing you an option, okay? But at the same time, extremely annoyed to even be talking about this issue. As many of you are aware, the FAA in the United States has decided to end their arbitrary period of non-enforcement for remote ID, also known as remote ID, okay? Remote ID is RID sometimes, which will happen on Saturday, March 16th, unless something changes. That's 2024. If you guys are watching this year's past, there's a good chance most of what I'm gonna say has already changed, so just be aware of that. Unless something changes in the meantime, please check out the FTCA and AMA websites for more information, or seek out more information directly from the FAA. Do your own due diligence. This is an area where I would be more than happy to talk to you in person if you are friends with us, but we cannot be seen as giving legal advice here publicly and then find ourselves in court being sued, or worse yet, end up in the pokey. Making toilet wine. All right, so keep in mind our videos are evergreen, meaning that they run forever, and sometimes there's changes to these rules. There already have been changes to the rules, mostly for the better, thank God, from the original monstrosity. And they have been provided to us from unelected bureaucrats, the elites. They're cramming it down our throats faster than almost anyone can respond, including the FAA, hence their 6-month arbitrary delays. What a joke. Before we start into this product review from Horizon Hobby, we just want to clarify a few items. This is actually a Spektrum product made under the mothership, fathership, whatever you want to call it, the Spektrum brand, battery Spektrum brand radio systems, okay? Before we start this product review, we want to clarify a few items. There may be times in this video where we have to stop filming, and that's just so we can put our personal information into screens. We may have to just take the total chunks out of the video, and we apologize in advance for that. We try our very best to share, but we can't always share every detail because there are certain compliance things on this that are going to belong then to me and be attached to me, and I don't want some bad actor to use my information and then end up in the pokey, okay? I don't have money to pay lawyers to defend me against civil action from the FAA. Again, yet another overreach, that side effect that they have not addressed. Anyway, getting back to the point, they did sort of address it, but not enough. All right, so we really don't want to create enmity within the hobby. That's one of our biggest things right now. Most people don't care and won't comply with remote ID. Most of us hate this rule, but there are some of us, some of you that need to or want to comply. Just don't blame people that comply for the rule that was forced upon us all. It was forced upon us all. Keep that in mind. We're only sharing this as a way to comply, but just please know that there are more than one option for this, okay? All right, so understand this up front. Okay, so now these rules are most definitely not of the people, by the people, or for the people. It's by the elites, for the elites who will ignore or change them when it's inconvenient for them. Just to be clear, it's just one of many examples of ludicrous, misguided federal government overreach, which seems to be the norm anymore. You guys already know this because you live in this world. We are adults playing with toys, for God's sakes. We're gonna get into more details as we go. Okay, we just want you guys to know some things ahead of time. One, we're not lawyers, we're not fortune tellers, we're not omniscient or omnipresent like the FAA thinks they are. We don't know what or why or when the FAA will do whatever they're going to do and whatever they've got up their sleeves. We have no clue, okay? So nor do we want this video to be confused, even in the least bit, in support of the FAA, especially with regard to the remote ID rules, okay? 480 pages or some such thing. I can't remember the exact number. It's changed a lot. It's ridiculous. Anyway, but there are, you know, kind of basic rules. We're going to try to help you comply with this if you want to, if you're concerned, okay? We were disappointed that the AMA didn't fight harder against the drone registry, which was a precursor to in combination with some other changes to Part 103 and several, not just one administration, but a few administrations, FAA reauthorization acts, which admittedly, I'm pretty sure they're going to reauthorize the FAA, okay? And that basically gives them as a regulator the right to make rules that then essentially become law. This is a bureaucrat, okay? The FAA is a group of bureaucrats. They're unelected officials by definition. They work for elected officials, supposedly. But it's kind of like what Congress does with most things. They cast the efforts in some other direction. The House decides if it's going to get paid for. The Senate decides how egregious they're going to overreach the communities with which they're supposed to be serving. This is what happens. Anyway, in case you guys didn't know how government works. So the FAA is a bureaucracy that is compelled by the federal government via Congress to do things to make the world a better place, aka self-serving. Okay? I don't want airplanes to lose tires into my rental car. I'm just saying. And you don't either. I get it. But this still happens. And I want planes that fly over my house to be in safe working order. But for God's sakes, it's so uneconomically viable for the normal human anymore that it has become a rich man's sport, okay? So there's always a trade-off between big government control and authority and reasonable regulation, okay? What they're doing here, completely unreasonable. They could have made 5 rules and done more than what they did in this legislation, which is not even legislation. Anyway, so sorry, I'm getting off script here. I need my teleprompter fixed, guys. I typed this myself. It was like 3.5 pages long. I've refined it a lot. All right, so we were disappointed to see that the AMA didn't fight harder against the original drone registry. That was a stepping stone that positioned the FAA for this extreme set of rules for remote ID, along with some other changes to Part 103 and the FAA reauthorization acts, which happened over the course of 2 full different administrations that allowed many of the protections our hobby had enjoyed for decades, and I'm talking like multiple decades, to be stripped. The FTCA, which would have just been known as flight test at the time, I believe, and the AMA were lobbying at the round table with the FAA when they were developing the most ludicrous remote ID monstrosity, okay? I remember watching videos of Josh sitting up there actually compelling the FAA and warning them, saying, hey, you need to be careful what you do here, because a lot of the future pilots of the world are going to come out of this group of people that are into toy airplanes. So if you like scare them out of it, then they're not going to be pilots. AKA, you won't be able to jump on your airplane and fly to California for your legislative action and then fly back to Washington, D.C. Okay, this is what really happens in real life. I remember listening to this. Admittedly, they were both fighting hard, lobbying for protections and corrections, but we felt the FCTA was hitting the pain points more effectively than the AMA, or at least that's the way it looked to us. And when we listened to and watched the FAA try to cause a slow and painful death to the hobby that we all love so much. Now, why were they doing that? Not limited to DHL, UPS, FedEx, Walmart, Amazon, whoever wants to deliver crap to your house. They want to steal any access to the airspace that you would have had. So there is kind of silver lining in this, that if we codify control of airspace, then we could potentially protect our own private property, which is another big problem with this rule, because anyway, I don't want to get into too much detail, but the CBOs, which are community-based organizations, are allowed to then compel the FAA to administer a FRIA, but they should not work like that. We should be allowed to, if we own property, say, this is my property, I would like a FRIA, and it should be a shall issue instead of a may issue. So a may issue means they may issue the, permission for a FRIA with full, formal, codified, acknowledgement. But it's not that way. It's currently a may issue sort of situation instead of a shall issue. It should be shall issue. So that's something that I'm hoping the AMA and the FTCA, which stands for Flight Test Community Association, if you guys didn't know that. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, and then the AMA, where's the magazine? The The AMA, Aeromodelers Association. Is that right? Did I say that? Aeronautical, I always say it wrong. I'm sorry, guys. But we're in the AMA and the FCTA, or FTCA. I always flip those two around. All right, so continuing on, as for the drone registry, if you don't know what a FRIA or remote ID means, you're probably pretty new to the game, or you have had your head in the sand for the last 2 to 3 years. And that's admittedly, I have a friend, his name's Esteban. I always make fun of him for doing stupid things. He's climbed into trees and helped me retrieve planes and do all sorts of fun things. I've been flying with him for almost a decade now, and he's a close friend, and yet he is still confused about these things. I don't know how. Granted, we live this life and he just does it as a hobby, like many of you do. And so we understand that. But anyway, don't take the head in the sand thing too personally, because there's a lot of people that have their head in the sand. It's a great place to be. I'm just telling you right now. This massive overreach started loads of backlash from the RC community, with almost 54,000 comments to the FAA's proposed rule, which is required when a bureaucracy wants to make new legislation. It's just like when they did the Healthcare Act, under Obama. And there was like tons of people that said, hey, I don't want to be compelled to buy health insurance. I don't want health insurance. I'm healthy. I don't need it. Or I'm old. I already have Medicare or whatever. I don't know, whatever. It's the same thing that happened there, except this is for a much less critical part of our lives, okay? But it's still an important thing because it's massive overreach. With 54,000 comments, many of our concerns and complaints were totally ignored, but thankfully a few were heard and corrections rolled into the final rule, which came out like about a year and a half ago, went into force, and I'll talk about that later, which is more like a list of rules on the entire country to operate on. Yeah, it's like 400 pages long. So it's so huge, you could have literally written the rules for an entire small country to operate on, not just fly radio-controlled airplanes, but I digress. We're hopeful that this continued lobbying efforts from the FTCA and the AMA will see many more changes that will help straighten out some of the things that didn't get fixed in the original rule. Obviously, the original rule ended up getting delayed for almost 6 months, or not almost, like exactly 6 months, from September of 23 into March 16th of 24. Okay, so why would the FAA delay enforcement? Now, they didn't delay enforcement on the manufacturers, they just delayed enforcement on the individuals that were flying. The reason they delayed it is because their monstrosity rule made it almost impossible for them to actually comply with their own rule, and they had no idea how to do half of the stuff, because the devices like this that they claimed would be about 50 bucks turned out to be on the cheap end about 100 bucks. Now, that's not to take anything away from Horizon. They're doing this at almost no profit, like rounding error profit, okay? This is not, they don't want this. Right. Yep. Nobody really wants this. There might be some manufacturer out there that wants this, like the chip manufacturers or maybe the component manufacturers, but really nobody really wants this. They're doing it as a compliance service to the community, because they don't want to see the hobby die. Now, to be honest with you, there is good news. And the rule is far better than it could have been, but it's still insane, and don't hear that wrong. These rules are a huge net loss for the hobby and for aviation in general. It's going to make it harder for people to get into the hobby that's already hard to enter. A hobby that's one of the most family-friendly, safe, well-respected pastimes, now being treated as essentially a criminal enterprise. It's evil and despicable to allow these unelected agents of the state to have this level of control over our lives, but here we are, okay? So I'm just gonna continue working through my list. I mean, you could read this verbatim, but maybe we'll put it in the comments or something like that. I'm not sure. We could potentially do that. Here on Brian Phillips RC, we have a policy to provide the bare minimum of free marketing to and for any agency that participates in this and similar overreach. We have, for this reason, remained largely silent on the matter, aside from a micro rant at the end of a video here and there, or a comment on one of our fellow YouTubers' contents, like Bruce with XJet. Of course, he's been fighting the good fight for a long time. Josh Bardwell, who's one of the drone guys, and he does really good work, obviously bigger channels than ours. And then Flight Test, of course, they've been really instrumental in trying to keep and protect some of these freedoms and slow down the degradation and loss of freedoms. Obviously the AMA, which sounds kind of crazy, but occasionally the AMA has got stuff out, which is helpful. And then Ken Herron, if you like a good laugh, we've watched a lot of his stuff. He's been pretty instrumental in application of, and more on the Part 107 side because he did a lot of drone filming stuff. And anyway, if you don't know who Ken Herron is, he's a hilarious guy. He used to run a radio talk show, and I think he does the YouTube thing full time now. But it's very interesting stuff, and he's got lots of tattoos. I obviously don't. And then many more. If I didn't mention you, I apologize. XJet actually is just one of the channels that Bruce runs. And he has some interesting ideas, given that he's from New Zealand and he's not an American. It's okay, because he thinks a lot like us Americans, which is kind of interesting. So to be clear, we're not telling you what to do with regard to remote ID. We don't care what you do. Comply if you want. Don't comply if you don't want. It's just whatever you want to do. We just want to help those that want or need to comply. Whatever the reason may be, keep in mind we are very exposed by what we do. Obviously, we film it, we put it online. And so our position is to follow the rules as much as we have to keep out of trouble, because I don't like the pokey, okay? Which, by the way, speaking of the pokey, the FAA administrates rules. It becomes a civil infraction that is then partnered with law enforcement, whether it be local, state, county, federal, if it was like the Army Corps of Engineers. There's just a lot of different agencies that would work together to pound you into the pokey, or in the pokey. By the way, for all of you full-scale pilots who complain about drones, we appreciate your concerns. We have and do respect manned aircraft, and always have. And to the best of our abilities, we teach others to identify and always yield the right of way. Remember, I also fly manned aircraft, Part 103. I'm a US PPA certified powered paramotor pilot, albeit an inexperienced pilot that needs loads more practice. I do understand your concerns on a very personal level, because I fly in manned aircraft, and I also have ambitions to fly Part 103 in ultralights, and then ultimately at some point get into the sole aircraft, which is why I'm building a freaking runway, in case you guys didn't notice that. That's why we're building a pond that's gonna have a damn runway. That's why I'm building a helipad that's gonna allow me to land helicopters on it, and not that, nope, not that size, don't point that way. We are really doing it, people. So just understand, I really do care about aviation safety. And I had two guys, there's some people on YouTube that have gone from being like reject remote ID to we're selling courses that allow you to Part 107, and so you can be compliant and all this stuff. And I'm just gonna say one thing real quick about this, and the rant is supposed to be over, but I'm just gonna throw this in now. There are a bunch of ways that you can remain compliant, and you don't have to necessarily buy this tool. First of all, we hate the concept that you have to buy something to be compliant with a government that is overseeing your playing with toys, okay? Now, it just baffles my mind, but we're here, and so we're gonna show you how to do it. And it's actually a lot easier, because the rule went from a monstrosity to a smaller monstrosity. It's still huge, it's still overbearing, it's still ridiculous, and there's still a lot of mistakes that need to be corrected by the AMA and the
FTCA.
Thank you, FTCA. And other CBOs that might step up. I'm not sure if there's other CBOs, I'm not aware of them. Community-based organizations are lingo that came out of the drone registry too, which is just goofy. But the AMA, essentially, part of the reason, and somebody explained this to me that has a lot more years in the hobby, that understood things better, but the AMA used to be essentially like an extension of the federal government. And it rolled into a civilian-controlled organization with almost powers of the federal government to make some level of carve-out. It was kind of like this weird, like, federal lobbyist. It's the way I understand it. Now, I could be misrepresenting those details. I may not be saying it exactly, but that's kind of the gist of it. Okay, so when I complain about the AMA, I complain about the federal government. I don't complain about the FTCA, because they are run of the people by the people, whereas the federal government is generally not really for the people. They're supposed to be, but they really kind of aren't. Now, of course, I want to be safe when I'm flying. I want to have reasonably safe flights. I want planes to be safe overhead. But there is like a balance between having a 10,000 page requirement to make a single engine plane fly and, you know, hey, it's part 103, it's okay. Suicide's okay, homicide's not, right? That's kind of the I don't know if it's supposed to be a joke, but the truth is if you want to fly part 103, you fly in, you know, an ultralight. The idea is you can kill yourself. You just don't want to kill other people. So like 2 seats is not allowed. Weight limits are low, even though I'm fat, which is a problem. I'll have to work on that. Maybe you can make a salad for me, honey.
Okay.
So there's a lot to consider in this. And so when we talk about these things, we don't do it on a routine basis because A, it's just kind of a non-starter. But also B, there was so much fear that we were gonna like lose this whole hobby that we love, that it was just like, it was just depressing. It seemed like every 3 or 4 months we'd get an email with some sort of a change, and it was always bad news. The last few emails have been actually pretty good news. And I'm just gonna tell you this, within the AMA program, you get this magazine that comes out, you could buy it too, but they have updates in here. I'm not gonna like point the camera like at the entire ad, but one of the first things that I look at in here is they have updates for remote ID. So I always like read through these stories, and it's really helpful because then they have more. Like this one, they had another one in the back. And so it's really nice to just kind of have like something, a publication that comes out and reminds me.
And then you get that every month, and they usually have an update.
Is it every month?
I think so.
Okay, so if it's every month, there's usually updates, which is really nice. Now you can obviously get online and learn and read about the changes, but what's really pissed me off about the drone registry in general is way back when we applied and followed and paid the $5 fee and whatever. Now the last time we had to do it, which would have been our 3rd time, right?
Yes.
It was our 3rd time. They asked us for a complete list of planes. Remote ID had not even started yet. There was no compliance because nothing had happened. We were doing it before it went into effect, and yet they were still asking us to comply with impossible things. Like for instance, this is a Cherokee 1.3. It's fully legal. This is obviously not got remote ID. It's not got standard remote ID, but you can add remote ID like this option here, or you can fly it in a FRIA. But the thing is, when this was sold, the manufacturer, if they sold it as a ready to fly, like there was no customer activity required to get it going, like setting it up with your transmitter, for instance, like Brian Phillips RC does, helps you to do, then they would have to be compliant with remote ID because this would have been manufactured potentially after the date. Now, I don't know what date this was actually manufactured, but if it was manufactured after the manufacturing limit date, then they would have had to make it with this device. This is a $100 device, right? This is like a $300 plane. So you're gonna add a 33% to the cost of this plane. Now you look over here at this, you know, SWS 2 meter, you know, that's an $850 plane. It's a little easier to absorb costs like this into that type of plane. But even still, it's like freaking 8-9% of the cost of the plane, 10% of the cost of the plane. That's unheard of. So as usual, the government has just made this edict that we're gonna have this device. Well, at the beginning, it was supposed to have Wi-Fi too. It was supposed to have cellular connection. It was supposed to have all these different things that were ridiculous. It was supposed to broadcast our location like all over the World Wide Web. It's like you could get online from anywhere in the world and see where anybody was flying. And I'm like, what are you talking about? It was a lot more than a license plate. It was practically a government tracking ID. This now is just using Bluetooth, which is a lot smaller range, okay? So they have to come out and actively see that there is a problem and then, you know, address the problem within proximity of the problem. That seems like a lot more reasonable application of this rule, okay? Whereas like, hey, everybody in the world, I'm flying from my home. Now you can find me. Oh, and by the way, this is where I'm standing. Come and harass me. Let's say you're flying in a less desirable community and there's like bad things that happen and people want to like steal your multi-$1,000 drone. I don't really want that to be published. Now, it's not the same as if you fly a general aviation, a real one of these with an 80B2 in it, and you're flying along. If you don't know what that is, it's a broadcast module just like this, except it's required in real planes. And you're flying to a real airport and you're landing there and you're getting out inside of a fenced facility with the power and the weight of the federal government, state and local governments defending it, okay? It's a whole lot different than standing there running a controller and playing with your toy, okay? So the camera crew is waving me along. Anyway, so all that being said, it's a good thing I took the time to type all this out so I wouldn't get off script.
Right, you've been super thorough.
That's right. Well, anyway, so the whole point is, with all that being said, we're still very lucky to be where we are, because it went from almost debilitating to the point of killing the hobby to it's a minor inconvenience. It's going to cost you probably $100. If you want to fly outside of a FRIA, fine. So with respect to our item, okay, so that all being said, there's 4 ways to comply. You can fly sub 250 right now, and as long as you're flying for recreation, like somebody explain to me who's flying these things commercially sub 250.
Yeah.
Like, can we just all get over this concept of like, you know, there is no commercial.
Maybe someone's spraying really tiny fields with the UMX air tractor.
So anyway, but it's just a joke. It's just like anything else. Stupid. The federal government just wants to have another angle that they can use to wrap their hand around your neck or put their foot on your throat. Guys, we can't even control our freaking southern border. You're telling me you want to regulate this Waco? Why do I have to pick the one I mispronounced?
You can't say.
Waco?
Yeah.
This Waco? Guys, federal government, ATF. These are not real rocket launchers. Okay? This is not a Horizon product, by the way. This is a Horizon product. These are all sub 250 planes, okay? This is just a quick example. There's actually another one right there, another one right there, another one right there. There's SR-20, is SR-71, is that?
I don't think that one is.
I don't know if that one's sub 250. But anyway, my whole point is this, guys. When you're looking at a sub 250 aircraft, first of all, they're very good. And if you're like, hey, Brian, I belong to a club, I go out to the club, but it's like, man, it's Tuesday night. I just want to go fly something, you know, on my cul-de-sac. I got plenty of room. There's not a bunch of trees. The kids don't live down here. I'm not going to cause a dangerous condition. Well, then go for it, man. If it's sub 250, then screw those guys. You don't even need to have a remote ID module. Now, there is another way you can do that, and that is if you have a sub 250, you know, like if you had to say it's 350 gram drone, okay, and you want to go fly, there may be some other local rules you need to follow. Deal with that yourself, okay? I have no clue. So that's number one. You can fly sub 250. Then you don't need any of this junk, okay? Number 2, you can fly in a FRIA, which is an FAA recognized identification area, meaning like all other government acronyms, it's sort of like counterproductively, you know, confusing because F stands for another acronym, FAA, really. And then R, remote, and then I stands for ID, which is another acronym, and then A for area, like what.
It's really helpful if you use acronyms within your acronym.
Within your acronym.
Makes
so
it
it's
easy to understand.
So it's like a whole sentence worth of letters. Anyway, what that means, a FRIA means this area is legal to fly. We understand there's going to be people flying there. And the reason they're doing that is because they're trying to control the airspace down to the ground. And it used to be the national airspace started where airplanes flew. And so they're trying to get drone delivery and all this crap and then drone taxis and drone this and drone that. Listen, I am all about technology. I'm all about the advancement of it. But I'm going to tell you how you don't advance the technology is get the government involved. Let the government just take a back seat. Have a very, very loose leash on all this technology. That's how you let technology grow. I understand you want to kind of keep things safe, but you got to have a looser. You don't do 400 freaking page rules, morons. They didn't have 400 page rules when, I'm trying to think of who designed the World Wide Web.
Al Gore,
How do you think Al Gore did that? Sorry.
Option number 3.
Foot, mouth, insert. You can also buy a standard remote ID equipped device like a DJI or some such thing. You have to make sure though that it's on the list of approved devices. This is on the list of approved devices from the FAA. We went, we looked, we checked.
It should come with some certificate of compliance
It's a
or
certificate
document
of, it's a COC. It's a cock.
complacency. That's not
COC. We have COCs on scales too.
No, it's a COD, which is not COD. But anyway.
Certificate of Compliance?
Compliance, I think.
Yeah, Certificate of COC. It's a Certificate of Compliance. I'm not making this up.
No, it's a
That's
DOC.
under the National Institute of Technology.
Declaration of Compliance. If you buy, so if you have a broadcast module, it will come with that. Or if you buy like a DJI drone, it will come with
That's called standard remote ID.
Yeah.
So that's what the FAA said. All these things we're going to have. Oh, yeah, it's already in there. It's no big deal, guys. I mean, most of you guys are flying like, yeah, you guys put unnecessary technology in there already. Yeah. Yeah, all of you. Yeah, I mean, I did some research yesterday before this meeting where I'm going to make rules for the entire populace to follow for the next decades.
Yes.
Or you could buy one of these. That's what we're gonna do. Okay, add a remote ID device. We'll share an option today. Okay, so just blast through this today. But to be clear, there are 10 other options right now. This is like one of 10 options that's kind of like available right now. There may be a couple more since the filming of this, so just do your own research. Different size, varying. This is not the cheapest, but it's close to the cheapest. It's gonna be the most readily available, even more so than other competitive offerings. And that's not to take anything away from those competitive offerings. To be honest with you, since it's not a huge profit point for this company, my guess is they just want to sell them. Eventually it'll get to the point, if you sell enough of these things, then they will be able to be profitable. But it's like, you know, generally speaking, the engineering costs are going to pretty much blow any profit for a long time. Okay, and then by the time they change the rules and make these things, you know, not necessarily as capable, there is a way, by the way, to update firmware on this, okay? So if they change the rules, there's a possibility you can update the firmware, and that would be done through the programming port, okay? And there is an FAA number on the side of this package. We won't be showing you that number, but ironically enough, it is visible from the side of this package. Gotta be kidding me.
Oh.
That was pretty dumb. Marketing note, Horizon. Put that so it's not visible because people can go into the store and find that number and use it. Not a good idea. All right, so anyway, man. As an aside, this product is being sold at limited to no profit. It's right there in words. If you're not planning on doing any of this compliance and you already fly at a AMA approved field or an FTCA field that already has a FRIA and you don't need any of this stuff, I don't know why you're watching this video, but it's probably good to see that there are other ways to fly, okay? So we'll come back to this at the end. We did blast through that. It was painful, but we got there, okay?
I don't know if blast through is the words I would use, but.
Blast out?
We're still alive.
Yeah, that's right. So the other thing I like about this magazine, and to be honest with you, I'm not like a huge fan of magazines. I never have been. I've only had a few in my entire life. I was just trying to find this. There was one other thing in here. It is really nice to just have a reminder. One of my gripes with the FAA, when they did the drone registry at the beginning, you were compelled to. You had to give them an email. You had to give them your physical address. You had to give them all this stuff, which is fine. Congratulations, me. You had to put a credit card on file so they can charge you, you know, some egregious fine or whatever if they deem that you've broken a rule without a trial. And then you can go fight it later if you want. So all those things had to come into play. Fine, congratulations. Which, by the way, AMA, you ought to be working on a legal group that can protect people that are paying dues for legal battles against the FAA now that we have this new layer of compliance. That'd be a good idea. I'm sure you're not listening though, right?
Probably not.
So is there a reason that the FAA can't send me an email when there's a change in the rules?
Yeah, that would be a lot of work for them.
Yeah, I know. Well, they don't. So what do we need to do to actually make this thing work? That's the next question. Is this any good? Does it actually work? The answer is yes, yes, and yes. We're gonna start with this. We're gonna start with this battery. This is a LiFi receiver battery, lithium phosphate, I don't know, it's some other technology. And it's got a standard servo cable, okay? So this is 2S, 6.6 volts, 300 milliamp hours. So let's go ahead and plug this in and charge it. Now, I'm not 100% sure how I'm gonna charge this because I don't know that I have an adapter to plug into this type of connector. So I'm gonna just try this. I'm gonna have to figure a way to get that plugged in there. And then if I press and hold this, I need to change from LiPo to LiFi. Oh, there it is, LiFi. Okay, and then I need to change that down to 0.3. Okay, and then it's not gonna start, I'll just show you, it won't start because you need to have the discharge lead plugged in. So we're gonna pause, I'll find a lead and come right back. All right, so I did find an adapter that I had, and this is the type of plug you need. So it's like the female, or it's actually technically the male version of the servo cable. And mine happens to have a few other ends on it as well. And so I'm just gonna take and use an adapter from this Dean's or T-style connector into an, that's an EC3. That's gonna get me plugged into the charger. And then of course this is going, just make sure your polarity's right because you can actually plug those in wrong. Once you plug this in, it should be good to go. See, now it populates the screen. We have it set to LiFi, and then you can hit start. Okay. Did you get that in focus in time?
Yeah.
Okay, so now that's charging. And so this is gonna charge here. And why are we charging a battery, you might be asking? Well, the reason we're charging a battery is because you don't even need to hook up to a receiver. Like you could put that thing in any aircraft you want. But of course, in our case, our objective is to probably more or less put it in something like this. It's bigger than 250 grams, okay? Goodness gracious, the sun is blinding me. How is the sun blinding me at this angle? Because it's going against our exhaust vent. Okay, so what you would do is you would open up this broadcast module, okay? Just like this, and we might need to pause for just a quick sec. Okay, so we had to do a little bit of security measure here with some tape because we assume nobody's trying to screw us that's watching this video, but it is the World Wide Web. So anyway, so that comes out and there's one plug. So this is the Spektrum Sky. That's not a bind button, by the way. There is a small internal circuit here that's got all the different stuff that needs to be used. And then it's got the model number and the FCC ID, and then it's got the FAA number. The FAA number is the number you don't want your buddies to have because then they could type that in and attach, you know, your device to theirs, okay? So inside the package, what else comes with it? It comes with all this stuff. Now this stuff is a piece of, it's not hook and loop. This is actually kind of like hook and loop. It's that like ball stuff. Okay, it's on the ground now. And then there's a bunch of wires. These wires are gonna allow you to plug into different various types. Goodness gracious, that twisty tie is redonkulous. This is gonna allow you to hook up to various different types of receivers and applications, okay? So now keep in mind these wires are only so long, okay? So this one is gonna plug into the Sky module, just like this. And it's labeled, this says plus over here, I guess. Or no, that's not plus. That's just a standoff, my apologies. I'm gonna say, look at it, looks like a plus, doesn't it?
It does. Mm-hmm.
It's not, it just plugs in. So now these are all keyed the same way. So this is gonna be SRXL2, as you can see. So that'd be like if you're using a remote little receiver. And then right here we've got JST. And so you can see where your pinout would be. So the power is here, and then this is also signal. So this is signal and power. And then this one here would go to a standard like just a regular plug. Okay, but it still goes to this. That's the one we'd be using if we were using the battery. Or this one would be the used if we used this receiver in here. So let's show you how to do this. Now also, they say to like secure it to the plane. To be honest, I'm not even really sure if it has to be secured or if you can just get it in there. It's not spatially aware to the extent that it's like AS3X style corrections, but it might need to stay spatially aware as in it's like pointed toward the sky. So the way this would go.
Let me come around to this side, I think.
Okay.
Okay.
And we'll fire up the plane so you guys can see how this works. But of course you have to go onto the website and you have to actually type in this number and then associate it with yourself, okay?
On your DroneZone.
On your DroneZone FAA thing.
Yeah,
okay?
because then you'll associate that number to you.
To you.
Yes.
So basically you put that in, you put in your FAA drone number, and then, well, you will have already logged into your dashboard, and then you key this in. It shows up as an approved device that's attached to you, and you don't set it up as an airplane. And we're gonna talk about that because there is a manual that shows you how to do that. So let's continue in the manual for the rest of this. The manual is right on, I was gonna say on the web, but it's right
What is it?
here.
Okay, good. I was like, let's look at it really skinny.
Dang it. Okay, so we've already looked through this manual a little bit. And so you can scan that QR code for the most up-to-date information. This is one of these multi-folds. It shows the different configurations here on where to plug things in, okay? So like you can plug into the bind programming SRXL2 port, which is what we're gonna do on ours because we have a 631, which is identical to a 630. The only difference is there's an antenna. And then it looks like you can go, okay, so do you have to go into port 1 or are they just saying you can go to port 1?
I think you can go to any port, right?
Well, it says number 1 servo port. Why does the asterisk? A Y harness may be used with a Spektrum Avian Smart ESC on number 1 servo port. Do not use a Y harness for a conventional servo or ESC. Does that make sense?
Okay.
So you can share that harness. So you can put a Y cable on the end of this and then plug in through port 1, or you can plug into the bind port. The bind port may be used as long as there is no remote receiver connected. Consider another connection option if you utilize a remote receiver. On an AR6610, AR637T, AR8020T, and the 8360T receivers, if a remote receiver is connected to one SRXL2 port and the SkyID module is connected to the other SRXL2 port, there won't be telemetry from the Sky module, okay? Which I don't really care. Oh, and then this is just like warranty stuff. Okay, so we'll close that up.
Flip it.
That's just another, oh, wait, there is more.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna continue in just a second. So basically there's light conditions here because there is a light. And so what you wanna do is just get it powered up and then look for the light condition if you wanna do that. This is where the X bus port is. So that'd be like the 4-pin to the 4-pin, which looks like this, guys. So it'd be like the SRXL2 ports would go here to here, I believe, because these are not the same. That's 3 pins to 4 pins. So this one goes to the Sky. And you can do that too. You can hold these all together and you can see which end goes to the Sky module, like this. See, they all go to the module like that. And then these are the alternative that you would plug into outside of it, okay? So you could actually plug in the JST, or you could plug in this one. Did they give us 2 of these?
Nope, because you have a male and a female
Oh,
version
wow,
of those.
look at that, that's pretty cool. Okay, so yeah, so if you're going to a receiver, you could go with this. Or if you're going to that battery, you could go to this. Or if you have just a regular JST battery, you could go to this. And that's what's so nice about it is it's flexible in all the different choices you can do, okay? This is just an example of a 10 port. This is an example of a 6 port, okay? So this, the same thing with the 8360 and the 8020T would have the same port setup. And then this would be like one of your serial remote receivers, if you will, okay? They call it a ZH port for power and status updates over telemetry. Oh, that's what this is.
Mm-hmm. That is the Sky model.
That's called a ZH port? Okay, never heard of that before. It's a new thing, guys. Okay, so
this is what people are going to need to know that we can't really show because it's just all our information.
It's all our information. So basically you have to go to the DroneZone website, register and log into your DroneZone. Now, if you aren't already if you don't already have a DroneZone ID, then you've been breaking the rules for years already. And so if you're wanting to follow the rules now, then just go set up, pay the $5 fee, like just, I don't know, pick a plane or something. I don't know, because they make you pick something. Well, pick this then, I guess, because if you're watching this video, you're going to be doing this. This will be your aircraft, okay? Except it's not listed as an aircraft. In fact, that's the next thing I wanted to say. So select manage device inventory, add device. Does your drone broadcast remote ID? Select yes. Device type, remote ID broadcast module. UAS manufacturer would be Spektrum, not Horizon Hobby, it's Spektrum. UAS model, and then you enter this description, and then the serial number, which I taped over here, is right there, okay? See that black tape right there, okay? And so then you have to secure it to your aircraft. Connect the Spektrum telemetry port on an open servo up to 9 volts. So it's 3.3 volts to 9 volts, okay? So you can use a 2S pack is right in the middle of that range. You should be fine. If you use a 3S pack, that's gonna be a problem. Verify operation by viewing solid LED or remote ID mobile app, okay? Slow flash, solid, rapid flash. Rapid flash means error, don't fly. Solid means ready, fly safely. Slow flash means it's acquiring the signal, wait to fly. Okay. Guys, this is not a toy.
It's just for your toy.
Okay, so then they talk about the different wiring choices and they talk about the dimensions. It's 14 grams. Now, I'm gonna tell you this, if you guys are trying to save some weight, I bet the case weighs as much as everything inside, if not close. Well, say maybe half, if that. But remember, you've got your ID sticker on there. So if you take the case off, it might cause problems, okay? Now, the other thing is, this is like that hook and loop stuff. I was trying to get that and I dropped it. And I can't get the dang stuff to separate. Oh, there we go, finally. Yeah, see, it's that like more robust hook and loop. See that? Mm-hmm. I don't know if they can see at home. Okay, so you can use that if you want. I'm gonna just like plop it in there myself.
And remember, you can move your Sky module from one plane to the next, so you don't have to.
Unless you're doing this under Part 107, if you're a professional pilot and you're like, you know, spraying crop dusting or something, I don't know, whatever it is that you're doing that requires it to be commercial use, then you have to keep it attached to the device. I don't know, it's such a stupid rule. We hate talking about this stuff, guys, if it weren't already clear.
Yeah.
It is the most insane thing we've ever reviewed. And it's probably one of the most demoralizing things we've ever reviewed. I hate reviewing compliance stuff. It's such a joke. I'm not a lawyer. I don't even play one on YouTube. So, but the good news is, this is literally gonna open the door for a lot of people that thought the hobby was dead.
Yeah.
So it's not. Thank God that we have some people that are willing to spend serious coin to make some modules for us to use so we can keep flying and our beloved hobby from dying. Because that's literally what's going on here, guys. And I'm not saying they're the only ones that did it. I don't mean to toot their horn where it's not really earned. But what I am going to tell you is this. At the end of the day, and we say this a lot, there's a million easier ways to make a buck than designing, engineering, building, paying royalties, you know, doing all the regular business stuff that you do when you're running a business in a regulated industry for toy airplanes made of foam, okay? And it doesn't have to be foam, by the way. It can be a balsa wood craft. Now, this doesn't undermine any of the, you know, already in place. This is all notwithstanding current rules. There's already rules for, you know, heavier planes and faster planes and higher altitudes. And there's different things like with FRIAs that you have to know about. And it's all like this big evolving, changing mess of government overreach. And so for us, we're gonna limit what we talk about just because we don't wanna like lose our minds. Should we show them plugging this in real quick, or do we need to do the website thing?
Either, I mean, we could just probably plug it in, but we can also pause and.
Yeah, we're gonna set up this thing on the website right now, because now that we have access to the number, which we already had before, we just didn't realize it, and then we'll come right back. All right, so we're just gonna try this. We've got the Sky module ready. I've got the plug ready. So I typed in FAA DroneZone into my search, and then I click on it, and it opens up, immediately starts busting your balls about rules. Seriously, FAA, just come on. I'm trying to comply, for God's sake. So then we've got this little thing, we're ready to do it. All right, so apply for airspace authorization, all this crap. It makes me want to puke. Open the DroneZone, okay, register and or log into the DroneZone, launch the DroneZone owners and pilots dashboard. Okay, so that's the next thing I need to do. So I have to log in here.
Mm-hmm. I'm assuming so.
Okay, so we're gonna try to log in. It's gonna have all this crap, so I'm gonna have to do that off camera. So camera crew's gonna pause while we do that. So leave it up to the federal government. So you're being required to do all these ridiculous steps. And then the first thing they do when you log in is you have to consent to this huge, gigantic document here about all the information they're going to collect and use without your permission. But you have no choice but to accept it. Like, I agree. I don't agree formally, but I'm going to click it anyway. All right, so we accepted the egregious overreach of information collection gathering, that they're already doing it anyway. I mean, if you have a smartphone, they pretty much know everything about you and all the terrible things you said. So launch DroneZone owners and pilot's dashboard. It says Brian, so I gotta cover that. We'll blur that later.
No one knows that now.
Okay, so we're trying to do this creatively so we can show you where it is, but we have to cover up all of our like pertinent information here. So I put these notepads here. That won't be on yours, don't worry. So it says manage device inventory. So I'm gonna click on that. Oh, it says Brian again, I gotta cover that up. Okay, so fortunately I've only got one plane because all the rest of them I lost in the boating accident. That doesn't work as good for airplanes because they're made of foam. They were anchored.
They're heavy.
There was a fire.
Yeah.
We painted the roof blue though, so the house survived, but the planes did not, except for the blue ones.
Right.
We're gonna have to paint the blue ones red.
Shoot, okay.
For that. Okay. So we're gonna add a device here, and we're gonna have to pause. Uh-oh, Brian, gotta cover that. Okay, so this is the screen we're gonna fill out now. So this is where you add your device. We're trying to keep things focused here because we don't want to do like a, God forbid we would screen capture. Oh, it's working terribly. This is why I don't do videos myself. Device type, enter manufacturer. Does your drone, is that focused? Mm-hmm. Yes, it does. Right there. Boom. And then you select the device type and
that one. Yep.
Yeah. And then you can say Brian's Sky remote ID module. Okay, right? Mm-hmm. And then the UAS model. Oh, wait, isn't that what this says right here? Device type, remote ID broadcast. Okay, that one. And then you type in the UAS model is going to be SPMA 9500 Sky Remote ID Module. Mm-hmm. Okay. So then the manufacturer would be Spektrum, and then you type in the number. This is the number, in my case, you can scroll down here. It's under this tape. So if I peel this off, then you would see it. So that would kind of defeat the purpose. So I'm just going to peel it off and type that in. And I only smudged a little bit of black onto it. It's okay, it's coming off.
Great.
So this is a high security measure. I'm gonna add the device, okay. Okay, so now it shows Brian Sky Remote ID, blah, 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 from Spektrum, blah, blah, blah. And then we covered this up with a notepad and it says yes, and then blah, blah, blah. Okay, amazing. Now you could continue adding more devices, or I could close out the FAA notice a device has been added to your inventory, and then you can just log out and shut your computer down and throw it in the lake with all the rest of the stuff that you lost in that boating accident. All right, so we did that thing, and you guys may or may not have seen it, but we set our remote ID module up. It took us, I don't know, probably like 10 minutes. Yeah. For like a normal person, it might take like 4 or 5 minutes, but I'm involved, okay? So what you would do then is once you're set up with the remote ID module, in this case, the Sky, then you can stick that down kind of wherever you want. And I think it's supposed to go upward. And then you can plug it into a bunch of different spots. Now, if you don't want to plug it into your receiver, then you can power it up this way. Okay, so you'll just black to red, black to black, red to red. And then it comes up with this like little flashing light, okay, like that. And then it says, recording all the things you said about the government and how much it annoys you. So it's slow flashing means it's obtaining a satellite connection or some such thing.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
It'd be interesting to see if it connects inside.
Yeah, because there's that roof thing on top of us. Mm-hmm. Here, let's go out here. It's super windy, so who knows if this is gonna work, but it's still flashing. Get out of the way, cat. Come on, cat. So we're gonna go out here, see it's still flashing, flashing, flashing. Okay, now that we have the Sky, then we'll see if this thing ever connects. That'd be kind of cool. So we'll just like lay this down. It'll look like our deck is flying. That's kind of cold,
kind of cold out here.
I was gonna say, why did we do this?
Cool if we didn't fly because it was windy.
Yeah, no kidding. It is really windy, guys. So I hope the audio is not terrible. So anyway, this is gonna flash for a few minutes. It's probably gonna take a little longer, I'm guessing, the first time. I might actually just unplug. Oh, there it is,
there
it's
it goes.
done.
Okay.
So now it's solid. So now I can fly and stuff, okay?
Yay.
Yay, I'm gonna fly. Whoa, whoa, flew inside of an object. Wow, that's dangerous. Could hurt somebody. Don't fly in your living room, except I just did. So now, everybody can be like, I saw what you did there. That was an awesome move. If you're within Bluetooth range. Okay, so anyway, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna show you the alternative measure. Okay, so, oh, everybody died. So we just unplugged it. So unfortunately, if you were tracking me, federal government, you won't know now. You'll have no idea where I am, except for my address and all the other data you collected that you forced me to agree to, just to comply with other rules. I think it should be against the law to make me agree to other rules to comply with mandatory rules. That sort of stuff pisses me off. Okay, look at this. Whoa, whoa. So this, we can plug it into the bind plug, the SRXL2. Yes, I always say that really slow because otherwise I mutilate it. Okay, so it's plugged in there. Now it's in the airplane. So now let's talk about safety for a minute. Throttle cut's on. Throttle cut will help to keep my fingers and toes attached. So I'm gonna just slide this right where the sun don't shine, if the canopy's off. That'd be a good place for this.
Where
So,
the sun don't shine.
okay. We had thought about doing the other additional upgrades. We're just gonna stick this down here. Excuse me. Smart battery alarm. Battery overcharged. 12.5.
What is it?
Overcharged. Oh my goodness. Whoa, whoa, hold on. Ooh, I have GPS on here. Very cool. Look at that. Amazing. Excuse me. Am I coughing? Okay, so yeah, so there's definitely some Sky ID module information coming through now. So the one thing that's kind of cool about that is we'll be able to see speeds and things like that. And it shows your lat longitude, all that stuff. So just for grins and giggles, we got the throttle cut on. We're gonna go ahead and put this lid on. Oh, and just so you know, that thing is still flashing right now. So let's just show them, still flashing. Throttle cut's off. Okay, so it does not stop you from flying. It does not stop safe from working. Yep, see the elevator? You guys see it? It's trying to auto level. So basically, the plane is still fully functional, which was one of my questions I had about this. Throttle hold is on, or throttle cut is on now, by the way. But what I want to do is I'm just going to show you this. I'm just going to plop it down here. I'm not going to like secure it at all. Okay, so this has our exact latitude and longitude on it. And so it also shows ready to fly. It shows status, sats, so the satellites. And then it shows the time. Okay, so there's also a heading, so like 326 degrees. And then if I turn, then it changes the heading to 326 degrees still, evidently. That's kind of weird. And then maybe it's just because we haven't moved, or maybe that's because we have a building obstructing our view of the satellites, but it's still got 9 satellites connected. And it does show the lat longitude, and it shows the speed and all that good stuff. So maybe that's why the suggestion is that this thing gets mounted with a hook and loop, because then you can hold it in place. Now, the other thing you could do that might work kind of handy is if you have long straps like this, and we use shelf liner, as you guys know, so you could like come in here. This is just, the GPS should still work through that, okay? So I wonder if you could get away with just doing that. Because then that should still work through there. And I'm just trying to see if it's changing any of the data. It's not really changing that much. Oh yeah, it is. Now it's changing the heading. So as I turn the plane, it's now saying that 267. I think what's happening is we're just getting intermittent connections because of the roof structure of our house. You gotta remember, we also have solar panels up there and stuff. So with respect to how this works, there is an app. Oh, and then it shows a signal right there that's got like a little up arrow, okay? And then what else comes up? Looks like it shows, it still doesn't say anything about the time, but I'm curious if that's a time based on throttle. So throttle cuts off. I'm gonna go to the screen for the Sky ID. I gave throttle, and then I put my throttle cut back on, and it has not adjusted the time at all. So it's just still sitting there. So I don't know if maybe that thing is just not updating because it's not a priority connection item. It also shows distance in feet and the heading and then the degrees. So it shows where you're headed. It shows your lat and longitude. So if you know where you are and you know what direction you're pointed and you know the speed by which you're traveling, then you can figure out a path, okay? So that is what this does. And I'm just gonna go into telemetry, and I gotta be a little bit more reserved here on this setup. Yeah, see, Sky ID just populated down here, see? Right there. So I'm gonna click on that and just, yeah, once I click on it, it shows the FAA serial number, the horizon seal, and then you can export that data. So really, once you're connected to that, then you're able to comply with whatever stupid rule they've got. Now, keep in mind, there's also a means by which to update software, and the software is updated through, I believe, the same one that we were using with that battery pack, because this will allow you then to hook up to this thing.
The programmer.
The programmer that's used for the receivers, and that looks like this thing, okay? So we'll link to like the stuff that we're talking about in this video, obviously, so you can buy it if you want it. Most of you may already have something like this, but then this would, of course, plug into there, and then this would go to your receiver. But also, I believe it came with that little adapter anyway. See, yeah, it came with an adapter, but that's only the 3-pin one, okay? But this is the, that's what this is. And our end popped out. It's got a plug that goes in here too. And so that's why mine's all taped up, but who cares? So that's a programming cable. Of course, this came with our Sky, so we'll keep those cables handy. What's the moral of the story, guys? I had an in-closing planned, and my in-closing is probably been largely covered. What is the objective of the remote ID? The objective of the remote ID is to comply with idiotic rules that we didn't make, and we don't like them. But if you want to comply, congratulations. There's other ways. You can just go to a FRIA too, which is another way. For us, and to be honest with you, there's certain things that we aren't going to share publicly because it puts us at additional exposure, so we're just not sharing them. There is more to the story, but we're not going to share it yet. We might at some point, but just not yet. To be clear, do whatever you want. We're not for a big nanny state here. We're not your mom. We're not the government. We don't speak for any of them, especially your mom. Okay, unless you're my kid and you're watching this, and then you can ask mom what she says. We're a very small government with the absolute least amount of interference necessary to still get the job done of protecting life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, property in this case. We don't want to beat a dead horse here, and we don't want to be misunderstood on why we're doing this review. Some people will need help knowing how to do stuff like this, okay? That's why we have a channel. That's why largely we do a lot of what we do. Now, there could be some inferences made from watching this video and thinking, oh, well, you haven't complied this whole time. Wrong. But again, I'm not gonna lead you to water so you can drink it because it's already pretty obvious what's going on here. So if you don't know the water and you're not drinking it, then don't worry about it. You'll figure it out someday. Some things are for us to know and for you to decide because we are, after all, in this like really small public figure status, but we're a lot more exposed than average. So we have to be super careful how we play our cards on stuff like this. When it gets to compliance issues, you know, we're already exposed. So we just got to be careful how we expose ourselves more. And if you ask me, anything in Class G airspace ought to be considered free reign, and it ought to be a de facto FRIA. So FAA, if you're listening, I shouldn't even have to ask. It should just be your Class G, go for it. Okay, if you guys don't know anything about airspaces, go study airspaces and you'll understand better what I'm talking about. Class G airspace should be out in the boonies. It should be away from a Class D airport, a Class C airport, or a Class B. Of course, Bravo B would be the big airports, like Fort Lauderdale and Chicago, and those big airports are Class B. Class A is actually up in the air. It's like 18,000 plus feet and to a certain distance. I forget what that tops off. But then Class B is just it's just a big airport. Sometimes they have like big legs on the final, but they look like round on a map, and they have sections that go up like this, 3 tiers or 2, depending on how big it is. And then Class C airports would be like smaller regional airports, and sometimes they have a single and then a second pie. It looks like an upside down cake, like a wedding cake flipped upside down. And so that's because as you final an airplane, you're flying down to the ground, right? And then you fly up and out, right? Well, there's a shelf and a shelf like this. So where we're in Class G airspace here. So someday it might be Class D, depending on how we handle our airport, but it's probably not going to ever really have Class D status. We don't want that necessarily, but Class D is like a cone. It just goes straight up, okay? So it just depends on where you're flying and how you're trying to comply. Generally speaking, I think model airplanes have really kind of never been the problem. It's always kind of been about drones and VTOL type aircraft. And so as a result, because my passion is mostly for fixed wing. I mean, I do like helicopters. We do a lot of helicopter stuff here. And I really just mostly like scale helicopters mostly. We do some stick and boom. And the reality is most of that stick and boom stuff is done at relatively low altitudes. But when you're learning to fly, altitude is your friend. Get a few mistakes high was like all you hear when you're learning to fly. Get a few mistakes high, do what you're gonna do. You've got time to respond so you don't crash. At the end of the day, the FAA needs to be thinking about future pilots. They need to be thinking about how can we have people do this in a way that's safe to the pilot, it's safe to their equipment. I mean, we want to try to protect equipment too. And there's no reason the government doesn't just get to say, oh yeah, your stuff is not important to you. They're supposed to be protecting that. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, AKA property. They should protect this property. If somebody's going to steal this from me, they should protect that. There should be no reason why we have to, this is a second, fiddle to something else, right? Now, is this as important as a real Piper Cherokee flying with, 6 people or 4 people in it? Absolutely not. Is it more important than 1 person in it? Absolutely not. Manned aircraft should always take right away. This is not really that complicated, people. If there's an airplane, get out of the way. If there's an airplane you can't see, it's probably not an issue. If it's so far up and all you can do is hear it dropping chemtrails on you, then it's probably not going to be an issue other than cancer or flooding. Gaslighting. So anyway, yeah. So if you ask me, we already talked about the may issue, shall issue. Obviously, the altitude restrictions are lunacy. Sanction events are finally getting authorizations to go higher, which is really good, and it should have been that way from the beginning, because if you're in Class G airspace, there should be no reason why you can't go to 1,200 feet anyway, if you ask me, or 700 feet in extreme circumstances, like if you're close to a Charlie or Bravo airspace, because that's where the shelf drops. But we are still ultimately very frustrated about the way this thing came out. If you're flying Part 107, then the FAA needs you to claim 100% of your aircraft, which is ludicrous. And, there's no grandfathering for anything. Like, give me a break. Since when does that happen? As far as we're concerned, the FAA has so many different holes in this whole program that they need to start just really dismantling most of it. It's a bloated mess, just like everything the federal government tries to do. It's way too complicated. It's riddled with errors and complexity that's not necessary. And at the heart of the rule, what is the purpose? Are we trying to protect manned aircraft from unmanned aircraft? If that's the case, then just do that. But why not put the onus on the Amazons of the world or the UPSs of the world that have multi-billion-dollar budgets to work with, or the DHLs of the world, or the Walmarts of the world that want to have some little plane come and drop frozen shrimp or whatever it is you ordered that day, some toilet paper. more power to them. In 100 years, that might be happening all the time everywhere. And this will be a bigger deal. And I understand that the FAA takes a position that they need to start working on the regulations so that they can make that happen. Well, let me just tell you something. The government doesn't make things happen. They prevent things from happening. That's what the government does, okay, generally. They're not good at making things happen unless it's launching a missile at an enemy and blowing them up, okay? Which they need to be good at because I like to survive. And here's the thing. At the end of the day, what do they do best? They stop advances in technology. So get out of the way and let us do it. Also, they're going to slow down the influx of pilots that come from RC aviation. The harder they make it for people to get into aviation, the less the pool of pilots that we're going to have to draw from. I'm not saying you have to start with an RC airplane to end up in a real Piper. That's not necessarily the way it works, but there is a huge chunk of pilots that started with RC, or chunks of full-scale pilots that really would like to do RC. You know, so of course that's not really making the argument we want. At the end of the day, the government should not be involved in our lives if they don't need to be. Okay? And if they want Amazon, DHL, UPS, whoever it happens to be that day, to have ready access to my property, then it ought to be when I say it's okay. And you guys ought to feel the same way. Okay? If you don't agree with me, that's fine. We can agree to disagree. At the end of the day, we need to make sure that we're on our elected officials to really pressure the AMA to behave, because really at the end of the day, the Senate and the House are the only two bodies that can really control what the FAA does. We can't fire the FAA, you know. I think we should be able to, but we can't, okay? So as a result, because it's so complicated, then, you know, and I've seen what Congress can do. Congress can do a lot of complicated crap too. So why don't they just deal with it? I don't know, because they don't want to. All right, what else? One of the biggest reasons we don't want to bring this up is because it could be incendiary within the RC community. And that's part of the reason why, you know, and it's incendiary for good reason, because people have strong feelings and beliefs about what the government should do and what they shouldn't do, and whether or not RC really plays a role in aviation safety, or safety in general, or privacy. And those are concerns that people that aren't part of this community may have, largely because of drones with cameras and FPV flying and things like that. So it's like, hey, if that's where the problems are, why don't we just address the problems instead of addressing arbitrary mix of stupidity that we can't even control? We can't even write legislation or rules that really make sense anyway. Okay, so just don't. So at the end of the day, that's the way we feel. It's very frustrating. We didn't want to ever make this video, but we're making this video, and it's right ahead of the deadline. So if you guys are seriously in the market for a remote ID module because you want to be compliant, because you fly at your school field, where we used to fly, believe it or not, was an AMA approved site. And then there was one that we flew at that was not an AMA approved site, and we flew at a couple of different small fields. That slowly morphed into something that was illegal-ish, sort of unethical. I don't know how you want to look at it. It was really dumb, because I'm telling you, where do you spread the joy of RC? It's not at the flight field, folks. And I'm not saying there's not a place for that. Where you spread the joy of this hobby is at the schoolyard. You spread the joy of this hobby at the local park. I mean, you're not going to bring a jet out there with a turbine engine. Everybody knows that, unless you're an idiot. And if you're an idiot, then I suppose that maybe this is what the rule was made for. But the truth is, you bring something like this out to a park and there's kids playing over there and they see this, you're going to wet their whistle in all the right ways. You want to get these kids interested in this. All they do is sit around and look at screens all day anymore. And it's a tragedy. And we're going to look back at this time in history, I think, in 40 or 50 years, and we're going to say, what the heck were we doing? So I want to say rant over, but it's never really over, because the truth is, this stuff's always bouncing around in my brain. And we love this hobby. I love aviation. I love this hobby. My wife tolerates it. She puts up with it. And we spent numerous hours trying to come up with some compelling way to teach and encourage you guys. This is actually really good news. I know it sounds terrible, and we have highlighted a lot of the terrible attributes of what's going on. But at the end of the day, this Sky module from Spektrum, and admittedly, other offerings that are really similar to it, okay? But probably going to be less available because there's just strategically, there's less business that's gonna go after those things. It's a huge benefit to us because we are where we are. And if you don't wanna end up down at the county jail or the state jail or the federal penitentiary or with a giant fine or whatever stupid nonsense they come up with next, it might make sense to figure out a way to start being compliant. If you don't wanna be compliant, trust me, I understand. If we weren't filming ourselves doing this, it'd be very tempting to just say, you know what, shut the front door. Which is what I still wanna say, even though we do film this. So tough conversations, it's one of the hardest parts of being a parent.
Hey,
Camera crew, what do you have to say about this?
The only thing that you didn't cover, miraculously, in that time.
I know.
You can use the Sky ID module with non-Spektrum gear.
Yeah,
you can
that's
put
right.
it on any receiver.
You can, but it won't necessarily communicate the telemetry data.
Yes.
And the other thing too is you may actually still get some telemetry data on some devices. The point is, we want to be as clear about what this thing does. And let's be honest, what does this thing do? This thing tells the federal government what you are, where you're going, how fast you're getting there, at what altitude, all those different details. They know where you are and where you're flying to. Okay, congratulations, but it's only going to show up on somebody's app if you're within proximity of the app. The problem is, as you can probably already imagine, is that they're going to find a way to have some sort of coverage all over the freaking globe. So what's the best choice? Honestly, the best choice is have one in the bag, have it ready to go, be prepared to comply if some agent shows up, and then fly in a FRIA. That's honestly the best choice right now. That's the current environment. Now, in a year from now, it may have completely changed and come completely unhinged. And the truth is, if we are not fortune tellers. I think I might have mentioned it somewhere in there. Mm-hmm. And so we want to give good advice where advice is seeked out. We don't want to give advice that isn't being asked for, but the truth is people are asking for this. And we hope that this extremely long-winded, frustrating evaluation of an otherwise good product doesn't rub you the wrong way, because the truth is this product is actually a very important part of the success of our hobby, which is disgusting. And it should not be that way, but it is.
Yeah.
Because it's either this or you're forced into a FRIA. And to be honest, the AMA, as much as I felt like they left us out to dry when the drone registry started, which was pretty much not a big deal, according to everybody that was involved, but everybody like me, all you guys saw through it. We read the stitches on the fastball. We knew exactly what was coming down the pike. It was not rocket science to figure out what their goals were, okay? It's just very frustrating to eat it. And I don't generally do that in my life.
Well, and like we say, we always want you to buy the right plane at the right time for the right reason. Everybody's in a different circumstance, where you can
Different
fly,
site.
when you can fly.
Yeah.
You're flying different things. You're in a different location.
Yep.
You have different other governmental regulations.
Or you're at an event and you're not sure if their FRIA was approved. And you're like, I'm not sure if I want to do this and get in trouble. Well, if you're that worried, then you can do something like this.
We just want you to have the information, and then you can
make the best decision for
you.
for your situation, your site, your needs, your compliance requirements.
And the common enemy is the remote ID regulation itself,
But not everybody
what the other guy at the field is doing or not doing.
But
or
not
whatever.
everybody even agrees that that's bad.
Right.
That's what's disgusting.
Right.
Can you imagine being that person that thinks this is a good idea?
No. Okay, true. We're gonna get ourselves in trouble.
I know. We've already pissed off a number of people. Too bad there was no nuts or bolt sacks in this.
Oh man.
We could have done that too. Well, anyway, guys, we hope we've answered all your questions and then introduced just a few more. Because here on Brian Phillips RC, there's a lot of talking and sometimes not as much action as you would like. But the truth is, we really do put our heart and souls into this. When was the last time you saw me type up a 3.5 or 4-page document?
I'm going with never.
I'm going to go with never too.
The other thing is, and maybe you were going to say this, if you have comments, you can leave them, or questions, you can leave them below.
But there's certain things we're not going to answer.
We're not going to answer stuff because we
there's
don't know
stuff
the situation.
And the other thing is, we're not lawyers.
Yep.
We are not going to pretend to be one.
Nope.
And to be honest, we're in a litigious society. I'm not going to end up in court because I answered somebody the wrong way. If you are thinking about getting this hobby and you're like all worried about this, just don't worry
about it.
You don't run a freaking YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Okay. If you do run a YouTube channel, Cletus McFarland, coming for you. Just kidding. Cletus, you can fly into my backyard anytime you want. I saw him flying an airplane the other day. Like landed on a racetrack. I'm like, God, what does this guy not do? So anyway, Cletus, enjoy Motion RC. You can have them. So anyway, we like Spektrum, we like Horizon because they treat people better. And we enjoy working with good quality products that are delivered at the right price at the right time. And you guys get to decide, if that's true. So we think this one's true. We think it's going to be nice to have the telemetry on certain functions, but the truth is it does put us at a bit of a weird predicament because we have to film these things. And so if we seem a little skittish about sharing certain things, it's because we have kids. And if people threaten my kids, then that's not okay. And we're not going to put up with that crap. And so that's the thing, is like, we don't mind scrutiny of us, but we do have a family here. We care about our family, and I'm going to protect them. So being out in the middle of the World Wide Web and all the weirdos out here, vast majority of you guys are just amazing people that are super supportive and awesome and love RC aviation and all the different things. We share so many common interests. Even if we would disagree politically about stuff, we can still get along about RC. But at the end of the day, I'm a father and a husband first, and we do care about protecting ourselves from weirdos online. And there are a few of them. Trust me, you do a YouTube channel, you'll quickly find a few. And some of you just act like weirdos, but you're actually
we know you're not.
We know you're not, Grumpy. In case you're listening. So don't worry, most of your comments are going to end up in held for review, but I got them and then snickered and deleted them because I can't publish them like the last one. I don't think we left any stone unturned. We didn't want this to be a thing, but it kind of turned into a thing. I'm sorry, guys. Sometimes we try, I tried really hard to make this thing short and sweet. I physically am incapable of it.
Yeah.
So maybe we can make a short. We
won't do it again. We promise. We hope we never have to do this again.
Oh, please, God, please, nothing like this ever again. So this is one of the hardest videos we've had to make, and so we're glad. I mean, it wasn't about a miscarriage or anything like that, so at least that's good.
Yeah,
it wasn't any terrible family news.
No one had surgery or had to go to the hospital.
Nobody died.
Yeah.
There was no butter knives involved. So this is
just not our norm.
Yeah.
And so we apologize.
We try to keep things really positive because at the end of the day, you don't go into this hobby because you want another headache.
Right.
There was a cat that just jumped up. It was hilarious.
He's going from door to door.
Yeah. So if you guys do have questions and we can answer them, you can leave them in the comments below, but there will be some questions, admittedly, they're going to be unanswered, and that's by choice this time. Normally it's just we don't have enough time to get to them. If you want to help support Brian Phillips RC, buy the stuff from the links in the video description below. You can buy this thing. We'll have the Sky ID, the Sky remote ID module. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. And then we'll probably link to the Cherokee just because we showed it. Just to be clear though, it'll hook up to pretty much any Spektrum plane. And we outfit all these FMS planes in here. We outfit them with Spektrum receivers. So we can actually get that telemetry added. But just remember, if you're deciding between a 631 and a 637T, you may actually get some extra value from this too. I'm not sure if the Vario function would be activated because you do have altitude added with this that you might not have otherwise had. So we may have to test that at some point because you don't have we wouldn't have had altitude before. This was a 631.
Right.
So now we have altitude and heading and speed. So if you have a really fast plane and you want to see how fast it goes, you could use this device. So, there are some value points that you can extract out of this that maybe you're not going to get if you just plug in the battery and you make a little package that you drop into the plane before you go flying for the day, and you just grab it out and move it to the next plane and so on and so forth.
But you can do that if you want to put that in.
You can
whatever.
currently do that.
Yeah.
If it's for recreational purposes, you can do that. And that's why we're doing this. Because a lot of you guys have a lot of questions, and we don't blame you because we share a lot of them. This is just a mess, and we're gonna do the best we can to be compliant. And I don't recommend operating with implausible deniability just because it's a monstrosity and it's poorly written, and it was, 54,000 comments were largely ignored, untouched. I think the federal government, when there's a comment made, there needs to be a personal reply to 100% of them. Because guess what we could do then? We could slow down legislation that's bad, that is made by bureaucrats that aren't elected. That's what the founders wanted to happen. They wanted to slow down Congress from acting. That's why it's complicated. That's why there's a Senate and a House, okay? It's not by mistake, guys. We're in a representative republic here, not a democracy. A democracy is also known as mob rule, okay? Once the mob is against you, you are as good as dead. We are in a republic. It's different, okay? Go America.
We hope.
We hope for a while.
Okay, no more soapboxes.
All right, we're done. Guys, this is the most you've ever gotten from me on that stuff, and I hope it made sense and it wasn't just boring. We're gonna literally stop the video right now. Thanks for watching. So much more right around the corner. Oh, also, super thanks. Thanks for thanking us. YouTube members, thanks for being a member. Patreon, thanks for being members. Monthly support is always appreciated from YouTube groups. And then PayPal for one-time donations. If you guys wanna send us gifts in other ways, that we got 3 gifts. Oh, this month. That was crazy that they shipped to our physical. We have a PO box and you can ship stuff there if you want. And it's just super heartwarming. We got these, like, one of our guys, a 79-year-old guy, sends us a handwritten note, and it outlines just details about his experience and how we've helped impact their life. Everybody always lists off like the planes they've gotten, either as a direct result of us or what they've had in their repertoire, maybe before or as part of being involved with Brian Phillips RC. And it just warms our hearts to see these things. Not to mention they send us money, which is crazy. But we love this hobby. We really want you guys flying. So, I mean, we don't want to talk you out of like sending us $5 or $10 or something like that. If you want, that's fine. But I mean, these guys aren't sending $5. It's like enough to actually pay for dinner at McDonald's or a nice restaurant, depending on where you're going that night. And so we really appreciate that, but we don't say that to compel more of it. What we want to do is we want to compel you to buy airplanes, helicopters, quads, remote ID modules. Now there's a second cat, I thought. Batteries like this that would help you run your remote ID. I mean, I envision
I'll link to that too.
We'll link to the battery. I envision people buying this package and just throwing it in their plane if they're not sure if they're at a legal site. And just being done with it, okay? And just fly, guys. We want you guys flying. Get the NX10. Don't get a 7E, get the 10E instead. Don't support me a little bit, We just want you guys flying, because at the end of the day, when we grow this hobby, first of all, it has to survive, which sucks. But once it survives, we need to grow it. And once we grow it, that's gonna help to drive pricing down. It's gonna help to deliver better product, which means they're gonna have to listen to us. And yes, I am a big mouth, and I'm a talking piece that has access to the factories, which is nice. That doesn't mean that they call me and say, hey, can we do this stupid thing? But the truth is, they listen to our feedback. And it might take a lot of, average RC enthusiasts to actually get that feedback to the factory. So we are really advocating here all the time. You may not realize it, but we are. It happens in the background, but we do it all the time. So that being said, we are somewhat culpable when they do stupid things, so we apologize in advance for stupid things they're going to do that we don't know about yet. Did that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Rant is over. Eat your heart out, Bruce. I don't know how you do it all the time. But truth is, we appreciate you guys also on YouTube that have been fighting the good fight through this whole remote ID debacle and really kind of helping to keep us appraised of the situation in a very detailed way. I'm not doing a good job of articulating a lot of this, but some of you guys do a really nice job. And especially special thanks to Flight Test right now for being out there, being in front of the authorities, fighting for our rights to continue flying. And I don't even know if I want to call them rights. I mean, you could call them privileges, but since when did we have to ask the government for permission to play with toys? 2023, September, evidently. So anyway, guys, that's all you got for today. Hopefully it's not too big of a downer, because the truth is it is pretty easy to comply. It just sucks it's $100 or whatever it is. And when you're buying it, it might be $200 by the time you buy it. And as with anything else in this hobby, prices are going to go up. If you're watching this in 2 or 3 years, most of the sentiment is still going to be true, but there might be some more layers and some more bureaucratic interference. So the truth is, there's never been a better time to fly, because there's more help, there's better technology, and to be honest, it's a lot cheaper than it used to be. So start today. The beer truck's just around the corner that could hit you and kill you. So just be careful. Watch out for beer trucks. Public service announcements all through this video, Megan.
Right.
We're doing great.
Great.
All right, stay tuned. So much more from Brian Phillips, RC.